Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Strong Collectors Podcast. I'm your host, Dakota, here with my co host, Jordan. We come to you today with heavy hearts, sad souls. It is the death of the Haslab. Gone are the days of pre ordering $500 action figures that are 10 feet tall. Here are the days of ordering 12-inch action figures made to order. Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Strong Collectors Podcast. I'm your host, Dakota, here with my co-host, Jordan. And today, like I said, we are talking about the death of the Haslab, or, maybe not technically the death of the Haslab. They're taking the year off. Maybe it comes back. Maybe it doesn't. We don't know for sure.
Potentially the rebirth of the Haslab. We don't know.
This new format is going to be a little bit more made to order. So just kind of like recapping, for the new collectors out there, the Haslab Marvel Legends would roll out something like Galactus, and then there would have to be however many thousand orders before that figure got made, and then typically there would be tiers after it of at 5,000 over the goal you would get a figure or an alternate head or accessory or something like that, and so on and so forth. But if you didn't reach the goal, like with the Engine of Vengeance, enough orders weren't placed, so that figure, that offering, never got made. So they're switching it up now to make it a little bit more of a made-to-order offering. So with Dragon Man that they showed off at San Diego Comic-Con, they haven't fully unveiled the offering yet, but so far we've seen the Dragon Man. We know how big he's going to be, the articulation, stuff like that. And with him, it sounds like it's just going to be a straight up, if you want it, you're going to order it, but it's still going to be in that Haslab timeline of they're only making as many as that are going to be ordered. So if only 5,000 people want one Dragon Man, they're only going to make 5,000 Dragon Mans and then ship those to whoever bought them. And that's it. They're not going to go to retail. They're not going to be available for folks later on. At least that's kind of how it sounds now. They could change that as we get closer to the actual unveiling of it, which I would assume is going to be at PulseCon, but it may be later just because this is like a bigger project for them. But anyway, I don't know how you feel about it, Jordan. I think I know, but I personally am much more on board with this type of rollout for bigger projects because I don't really want the idea of crowdfunding, because to me that's like Kickstarters. Like, we're getting a new company up off the ground, somebody that needs that help to make something, where a company that's publicly traded like Hasbro doesn't, that just kind of feels a little icky to be helping them crowdfund a toy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it would be like, donate $5 for this fan film of Spider-Man versus Disney saying, hey, we need $10 from you to make Spider. It's like, why?
Right.
Just make it. If, you're the company with all the reasources, why is it on me to be like, oh, you didn't chip in, so we didn't make it. Sorry, guys. It's like, why is that my fault? You should have just made it. So, yeah, I've always thought, and we've talked about this, the whole notion of Haslab is we're only doing this to make giant figures. It's like, okay, we've got Galactus, we've got Sentinel. I never really felt like Engine of Vengeance was that makes perfect sense as a Haslab. It's eh. And then Giant Man makes sense. But beyond that, I think they're really kind of digging. I know everyone says Fin Fang Foom, but outside of that, I struggle to think of iconic enough giant characters that need to be 3 feet tall.
Yeah. Honestly, I think if they were going to do Haslabs, there's really only at most 5 more possibilities. And people have said a Celestial, I personally think there's no shot of that ever getting made. There's not enough people that would want it for the price that it would probably cost. A Blackbird, which I could see, but then you're going to have the arguments of oh, the whole team should fit in there versus only 2 in the cockpit, and how big should it be? So maybe the Blackbird. Fin Fang Foom, I think that's maybe the most likely. Maybe the Mole Man Giant from the cover of Fantastic Four #1, I think.
Yeah.
And then maybe like a Punisher van, but like maybe. I don't
Yeah.
even think so. I don't think that would get funded.
Mm-hmm.
But when you kind of bring it down in scale, and like we've even said, like you can't fit that many on your shelf, but
Mm-hmm.
with the size of Dragon Man, that, half the size, a quarter of the size, maybe depending on how big your Haslabs are going to be, you can fit more of those on the shelf. I feel like it just feels a little bit easier for me to purchase versus
Mm-hmm.
like we got the Galactus, and like that was like I had to have like a really good like 6 months of action figure sales to be like, okay, I've got enough money in the account to be like, I can purchase this.
Mm-hmm.
Where with even Giant Man, I was like, that's a little too big for my collection. Like it's not going to fit on the shelves behind me here. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree. I think we've talked about that before too. It's like there's some characters that would be cool to see bigger than what they do in a regular release, but not
Mm-hmm.
big enough to be a HasLab.
Right.
So I know you've of course talked about your like mid-sized Sentinels. I think
Mm-hmm.
that would be an amazing offering there. It's not going to be. We don't need them all supersized, but we don't want
Right.
them 7-inch. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in between. So I mean, I think there's a lot of different figures they could do more in that scale that would justify we need to do it as a special release, not just a regular
Mm-hmm.
release, but make it a little more affordable and I think just a bit more practical. So personally, yeah, I'm pretty excited about the possibilities of what that could lead to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think maybe because like I think a lot of people think like these kind of projects have to be like big like a Dragon Man, which I think, they definitely could be with, like you said, the Sentinel. I for sure want
Mm-hmm.
that. Even doing like smaller versions of Giant Man, or like you could do Black Goliath or
Mm-hmm.
Goliath or other large characters like that. But I think you could also do a little bit more like detailed, like it takes a lot more to sculpt this kind of character. Like if you did
Mm-hmm.
a Brood or a new Brood Queen,
Yeah.
something like that. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a Brood Haslab would really ever fund, but
I
doing,
don't really want it as a build-a-figure, so
right,
somewhere between. Yeah.
exactly. Because then you could have those more like articulated arms, legs, better wings, and you could even roll those out at the same time as a made to order. You've got your Brood Queen that's a little bit bigger, got a little bit more going on with it, but then you've got the Brood drones that you could just like order as
Mm-hmm.
many as you want to go along with the Brood Queen. So
Some classic X-Men figs, bada boom, bada bing. It's
yeah,
like an a la
exactly.
carte HasLab. Pick what you want.
Yeah. So I think there's more to it than just large characters. Maybe you have some like crazy accessories to go with
Yeah.
somewhat normal characters. Maybe this is how they're going to do Mephisto. Like a lot of people are,
Mm-hmm.
since Marvel selected the Mephisto with a throne, everybody and their sister wants a Mephisto with a throne from Marvel Legends. I think that's pretty unlikely that they would do. I mean, you got your King throne now, but I think it would probably be more along this like made to order style
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
you'd want, I don't know, I think you would want your Mephisto to be slightly bigger, but I think you'd want that throne to be like highly detailed, a little bit larger,
Mm-hmm.
similar to like maybe what McFarlane did with the Spawn throne.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, if McFarlane's putting out this throne Spawn, why can't Marvel Legends just put that at retail? So maybe that's not a great example, but give them some
Right.
extra fire effects and stuff like that to
Yeah.
really
Well,
zhuzh it up.
I think things that maybe you couldn't. I mean, we've talked about that too. The hurdle of like, are they going to put basically the devil out in stores? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you kind of get around that, like
Yeah.
stuff that we probably couldn't put in stores or maybe wouldn't sell as well. As
Yeah.
we've been talking, I was even thinking about like the whole. Could this be their branch into like doing a diorama type thing? Like you get a
Yeah.
little dio piece, so maybe it's not like a whole giant thing, but it's like a little piece of a backdrop or that could be where people finally get the danger room. You like,
Yeah.
you could port in tentacles or flaming circles, and maybe it comes with like a character or two.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be more like this is kind of our way because they're never going to release anything like that in
No.
any other format. But I mean, I think that would make sense to say this is the Marvel Legends brand, even just a generic like street dio, like this is a
Yeah.
street backdrop or something, or
Mm-hmm.
then maybe get a thug or whatever, or with it. So I could see even stuff like that. I think that's where they could get really creative and say, we're not just doing supersized, 18-inch figures. It could be, yeah, here's, like you said, a cool accessory or a really detailed sculpt that you wouldn't normally get, or a dial piece, or I don't know. I think there's a whole ton of things. Like, to me, that is way more exciting than we're just going to keep doing 3-foot figures.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. So people are upset about figures like Warbird, who's a Target exclusive, the Sentinels that were like announced at SDCC, the 2-pack, those sold out right away. Some folks still want more of them. And then like we see comments like on our stuff or on Hasbro stuff where they're like, Hasbro's like fools, they're leaving money on the table, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to just like take the conversation into what if all Marvel Legends went made to order. This is similar to like what Mythic Legions does, where Mythic Legions will, like, they just recently had their new Cosmic Legion wave put up, and you've got a month to pre-order the wave. It's a little bit cheaper when you pre-order it, and then they'll make extras, and they'll, retailers can buy them, and then there's more out there in the market afterwards. But when you pre-order them, you get a little bit of a discount, but you have to wait a year to a year and a half, maybe 2 years before those figures are made, depending on the tooling that it takes to make them.
Yeah.
Whereas with Marvel Legends, you don't have that waiting period. You maybe have to wait 3 months, maybe 6 months. Sometimes you get those random like Spider-Man 3-packs that take a year, but typically the timeline is much faster. It's like 3 months and you're going to have those figures in hand. In order to do that, Hasbro has to have those figures made on the boat and on its way over here before you know about it, about that timeline, because it's going to take over a year to make. So do you think, where do you think, and commenters, let me know in the comments, because what would you guys think about that? Because then you're never going to miss a Marvel Legend that you wanted, because it's going to be made to order, and maybe they make a few extras, but you have to wait a long time for it. What do you think about that, Jordan?
I mean, I could still see people getting upset with that, because it's like, oh, I wasn't collecting at the time, or I missed the window, or whatever. I mean, I guess that still comes up, though, even if a figure's released and then it's done and that's it. Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious more so to know, like, I guess the logistical side from Hasbro's perspective. Like, is Legions able to do that just because they're not on the scale of Hasbro? Like, I highly doubt. I don't know. I feel like with a company like Hasbro, they probably have a lot more responsibility to be like, we're reporting these sales, and this quarter we made this many toys. Like, I think Legions is more, from my understanding, a little more free to do what they want. So I mean, that logistical thing comes up for me, but I think it's a cool idea if they could pull something like that off, or even as like a promo, do that on like a wave that a ton of people are gonna want. I don't think they would do that forever. Well,
I feel like if they were to do it that way, like switch to this like pre-order model of like made to order, it would probably take them out of big box stores, similar to Marvel Legends, or not Marvel, similar to Mythic Legions, where you're not going to find them in Targets or Walmarts anymore, which I don't think would upset that many people, because you can't find them there anyway.
Yeah, but then I think they miss out on like what would be the casual buyer, like the non-collector buyer who's like a mom and their kids like, oh, there's Iron Man, I want them, and it'd be like, okay, but like that mom is not gonna know to go on Hasbro Pulse to pre-order, and like the kid's not gonna know to tell them. So again, I think it's.
But is that the direction we're already heading anyway? Because most of the waves now are either like Amazon exclusives, or it just seems like more and more are exclusives to like Fan Channel or Pulse exclusives or things like that, where it seems like a lot of the MCU stuff usually still goes to like stores, but that's kind of those mass appeal things like you're saying. But especially this year, it feels like they've been really pulling out of those spaces and making it more Fan Channel. So I just wonder if that's like a direction that they would ever, if it continues to go that way, if that would make that like a possible option.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, though. Like, if you take them out of big box stores like Walmart and Target, then kids walking down the aisle maybe aren't going to be joining in Legends, where you kind of have to have them on there, and it's kind of like that long game of like, we bought Legends as kids, played with them as toys, and now we collect them as adults, and we're collectors or whatever. Right. So
yeah, that's an interesting question, though. I'll be very curious to hear what people say, because I hadn't considered that before.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, because it makes sense for some things, but really it would only happen if things continue to be more challenging to get, like Warbird is like the big one, because we did a community poll, and I'll pull it up now, but so the question was about the new Warbird from the Target exclusive. If you got it, what did you think? Amazing, good, not worth the hype, or didn't get her? And we had 752 responses as of recording, and 47% of people said they didn't get her, which I guess it could be a mix of they either didn't get her because they didn't want her, but I think a majority of that 47% didn't get her because they couldn't find her. And that's kind of what the comments were saying was, they tried, they got on, and she was sold out. They can't find her in stores. They don't want to pay the aftermarket prices. So
yeah,
I don't know.
You might be onto something. Yeah. This one, Hasbro, isn't free. You're going to have to talk to Dakota about it. So send us an email.
Send me the email. I'll talk to any of you guys, all of you guys, however many you want. So those are some of our thoughts on the new made to order versus Haslab method that Hasbro is going to be trying out. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing. And until next time, stay strong. So those are some of our thoughts on, I feel like that's going to be really loud. So those are some of our...
Just make sure you're still listening.
Wake up!